So
right?
should this little light be facing up, down, to the side?
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
Yeah. You could see the microphone. It's like right here. Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Like that.
Okay.
Wherever you like. And just click record so we can. Oh, it's recording already? Okay. Just David said to give like 10-15 seconds so we can get the ambiance of the room. So.
Oh, look at the butterfly. I cannot get. Look at the butterfly.
Oh,
no, not
no,
butterfly.
Ladybug.
Ladybug. I kept saying butterfly.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah,
No,
I'm
ladybug. Ladybug. Look at. Okay, I'm gonna let it chill because apparently it wants to stay on me.
Yeah. Wants to hear the interview, right?
It sure does.
Yeah. Cool. All right, we're recording, right? Cool. All right. Well, Rosita, thank you so much for taking the time to, to meet with me and to, to share your story to like whoever is listening. So please, tell us who you are and yeah, let's start there.
Yeah, sounds good. So my name is Rosie Arias. A lot of people know me as Rosie. Mm-hmm. I am the founder and creative director behind Whimsical Charm. And Whimsical Charm is a line of uniquely embroidered baby blankets, fun robes, accessories, gifts, apparel for newborns, toddler, and kids in general. Designed specifically for families who provide their children with warmth, comfort, and style. So that is what we are known for. We've been around for 14 years. This new season, we're also adding our tween collection. So we are expanding into the next size of 7 to 14 or 16 within that size range.
Okay. And how did you start Whimsical Charm? What was the idea behind that?
Oh my goodness. Okay, so the idea behind Whimsical Charm. So we started with just blankets. So the idea behind the blanket was to be able to provide a blanket, something warm and comfortable for baby that they would feel, something they would feel as if they were receiving a hug when they were wrapped in it. So that was the whole idea. Like I wanted baby to feel like they were receiving a hug, like if it was a hug from mom or dad or their guardian, that it was nice and warm. And at the same time, I wanted a blanket that was easy maintenance and that could live, a fancy party or going to the park. Okay. So multi-purpose. And so that's how it started. But with my background in fashion design, I also, at the time, was figuring out how to minimize my cost. So I knew that there was a lot of cost involved with different types of testing when it came to apparel. So for me, I quickly learned that fabric and thread was a minimal cost, minimal expense to produce. So that is how I then figured out, okay, let me start with the blankets, start somewhere small that I can handle. Didn't have to do any testing with the blankets, and then the embroidery was just thread. So I didn't have to do any extra testing with the thread as well. There was no kind of measurement guidelines that the baby category comes with, and a lot of strict rules with that. So ultimately, there was a bit of those combinations, but it came from how I wanted baby to feel to how I wanted parents to feel with the blanket, easy maintenance, multi-purpose, and then the logistics behind it started taking place also. So it was a little bit of my experience, my skills, what I've seen, what I've worked with, that took place into putting it and starting the collection.
Cool. So now let's backtrack a little bit. Now, from your beginnings here in California, you were born here, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So talk about your upbringing. Like, how did that play a role into who you are today and in the business that you're creating?
A very great question. So this, so my parents are from Jalisco. And since I was 5, I can recall traveling every year to Mexico. So we were there during the holiday season. And back then, our holiday season was extremely longer than what it is now. It's almost a month long back then. And so we traveled, did the road trip And the road trip back then was 72 was, yeah, 3 days completely from door to door. And so we traveled through many large and small cities. So I recall my mom always taking our old clothes, shoes and clothes and the whole bit. So we had our, the car loaded with not just our luggages, but an excess of clothes. And so along the way, my mom was giving away our clothes and giving away shoes, pencils, anything that we had excess of. And so as a kid, you're like, okay, yeah, that doesn't fit me. It didn't seem unnormal to me, but I was just like, oh, look how cool these kids actually are. Like, oh yeah, I want it, I'll have it. And so that was one of the recollections of my past that brought me to even before I had my business, where the kids and tweens or teenagers were always like this category, this age range that I wanted to always help. And so anytime I had an opportunity to donate, it was always within that age group. So it was the baby and then teenagers. So teenagers also, because that's just a crazy life for all of us,
Sure.
our teenage years.
Yeah.
It could, your friends can make you, can break you. The school that you're at can make you, can break you. You can gear off, right? It's either the right direction, wrong direction. And so I always knew if I could, give some type of a donation to an organization, that was the age group that I wanted to do. So seeing all of this growing up, then automatically for me, it's like, oh, I want to continue doing that, right? Giving to those less fortunate. And I mean, we were a household of 7, so it's not like we had this, we were counting everything that we had. And, but that helped also then initiate what I do with the business, where every year during the holiday season and pretty much whenever I can throughout the year, but it started really during the holiday season, where I then started donating to a nonprofit that really felt near and dear to my heart.
Oh.
And some of them have been to the children's hospitals. They've been to a couple different children's hospitals. Then we, excuse me, then it also extended to the Jewish Foundation and the San Diego one specifically, because they are the location that cater to displaced families at the border.
Oh, okay.
So that was a whole different transformation for me. So started donating to that organization. Then fast forward now to current day, we are in a collaboration with City of Hope. So we've been working on actually it's been a year-long campaign where you buy a blanket, we give a blanket. And so it's probably been maybe about 3 years now where that concept was built. Because prior to that, it was just me donating, right? So we were taking funds from the business and donating, right? So then we started doing this buy one, give one. So every time someone would buy a blanket, right, and then we give a blanket as well. So that's how we've been able to kind of take some of those resources and then do that donating. But again, this is what I saw growing up, right? So on the road trip into Mexico, we giving away what we didn't need, what we outgrew, right? We outgrew and seeing that there was people out there that were less fortunate or that really needed, an extra pair of shoes, whatever the case may have,
Yeah.
some slippers, whatever. So that has really molded me into who I am today.
And you don't really think about that because my wife, she grew up poor as well. And she told me that socks for her were a luxury. And I was like mind blown. I was like, something that I never, ever thought
Experienced.
of.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, like that was like,
It's
mind blowing for
insane.
me. I would like, I mean, I would hear my dad talk about like how hard his childhood was, right?
Yes.
But when she told me that, and then when she told me she never had a Barbie doll or anything like that, I was like, okay, well, it's a real humble check.
Yes.
It's a real like, a gut check.
For
So,
sure. Um, and so, with that being said, with my first daughter, when she was also growing up, we always had the pile for donations.
Uh-huh.
Okay, whatever you're growing out of, we're going to donate to the kids who need it. So she then started like, okay, Mom, here, these don't fit me. Are we going to give these to the kids that need it? Yes. So I started instilling that into her. So it just became a normal part of life. But, also so she could, right? So she knew and she understood that not everybody has what she had, right? I mean, your parents come and your parents are trying to do better for their kids than what they had, right?
Yeah.
And they did, and they do. And then, but here's the next, then, their kids, then we're then now stepping up and trying to do better for our kids than what we had. And, and that's the whole cycle. And so with her, it's like, okay, let's start teaching you these bit of, life lessons, these understandings of how not everybody has what you have. And with her, it was a bummer that she didn't get to experience those road trips, right? Yeah. She didn't get to experience the streets of Mexico from all these different communities of how it is to really be, poor and not have anything. Yeah. But she did see that in school with other students and other kids.
Yeah.
So I would always tell her, if you're not going to eat your lunch or, you have an extra ticket or an extra whatever, I said, find someone and give it to them. And so she would. And I'm like, you just don't know. You just don't know. So that has been instilled in me from day one.
And you never know how an act of kindness would affect a person,
Oh my gosh,
like,
yes.
I mean, somebody may be at the edge and then they get a helping hand from somebody, and it makes them, like it definitely changes their life. And, they're like, okay, like, I mean, people are out there.
Yes.
That do want to help and that do care about others.
That are kind.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I'm a big believer in that. Like you give what you receive, right? So like, but you have to give more than you receive, right? If you give out to the universe, you put out good energy, love.
Yeah.
And, it'll come back.
It'll come back.
Not to say that I want it, like, that's why I'm doing it.
Yes,
But
no.
it's, it's just the right thing to do.
And it's a cycle. It happens. We see it does happen. That's the cycle that happens. But so going back to just mentioning as far as, act of kindness. So my daughter, there was times where coming out of school, she would mention, oh my gosh, I was so hungry after school and I had already eaten out my snacks and everything. And she said, my friend's aunt or grandma was so nice that she brought me something. I don't know if they were practicing that after school or something. And I was like, well, that was very nice of them. I said, but look, this is, you had finished whatever you had, and it's not like you were in need. You were just,
Sure.
still a little extra from after school or after your practice. I said, but look how kind they were to come in and bring you something, or her grandma knew that, you guys were practicing and she came and gave you guys something. I said, but that was the same thing, the same concept as when, I would tell her, and as I was explaining to her, this is the same concept as I tell you, like if you have extra and you're not going to have it, don't throw it away, don't let it go to waste, give it to somebody else.
Definitely.
And that's how it came, around. And so it can be any kind of situation that you just don't know at what point you're.
Okay, cool. We're good? Okay. Yeah, sorry. So what I was going to say, so what about like, okay, that was an experience that you lived that definitely molded you, right? So what about your parents? What role did they play in instilling the values and maybe the work ethic or, anything else that, definitely made you who you are, today?
Oh, for sure. So growing up, I saw my dad, excuse me, working 2 jobs,
Okay.
and my mom working like graveyard, because I remember she would go in, we would get home and she would be leaving, we would get home after school and she would be leaving to work. And she would get home like at midnight. So she had like that late afternoon kind of graveyard thing. And so and so my dad worked during the day, early morning during the day. So then he was home when my mom would then leave, right? So there was someone always home. And so that was always the shift that I saw. And then my dad, I don't remember at what point, but then he had his own business.
Okay.
And so he was still then working 2 jobs when he started his own business. And then when his own business started picking up, that became his full-time job, and then left that other. He was working at the supermarket. Back then it was called Lucky's. So that's
Okay. Yeah.
I think it's now Albertsons, the ones that are still around. So he left that job, and my mom was still working that graveyard. So this is still schooling time, right? Through elementary, middle school, high school. So I always saw them, right? Working hard, always providing, right? So for me, that was like, something natural. But there was always something in me that seeing my dad work, had that self-business entrepreneur, I always kind of felt like that was going to be me. But definitely seeing, the hard work, the long hours, the exhaustion, it's building up the business here. It was like the same thing. The long hours, you're exhausted, but it's something that you're creating, and seeing that it was very, it was fruitful for them. Then it was like a natural gravitation for me, even while I was in school, going to school and studying, and knowing that eventually I was going to ultimately land or follow those footsteps of entrepreneurship. So the hard work, the work ethic, and everything that I have definitely comes from what I saw growing up.
Okay. And, I obviously know a little bit about your life being your cousin, but the youngest of how many?
7.
7. The youngest of 7. So, you had, I guess, the added advantage that you had older siblings that had gone through the steps and through all the trials and tribulations.
Yes.
So what role did they play in your life?
Well, because I was the youngest, and the older siblings had that role of with my parents of being the translators, and going to them to different doctor's appointments, or to the bank, right? To los mandados, everyday kind of thing, so that they can be the translator. So I never really had to do that. Very minimal, right? But they got the weight of that. So then I saw that, because being the youngest, you're mixed. I'm like in everything. It's like I'm in the Kool-Aid, like in everything. The metiche here and there, like knowing all of the gossip of everything, just because I was like always here and there. No one was ever gonna tell me as a kid, like, get out of here.
Sure.
So I saw all of that, right? And that then also played a huge role. And then seeing that that they went to school, they got their job, right? And then they ultimately left the house, got married, left the house, and the whole bit. Their work ethics were always, the same. Everyone went to school. Everyone had a great, job, and then, as they started having their family and their family, their family started growing, and seeing how they were providing for them. So I went through that entire experience with all of them. So ultimately, there was a little bit of each of my siblings, of an experience of theirs that I also saw, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna avoid doing that, or that was smart, I'm gonna go down that route. So it was always nice, because then when I got to after high school, then when I got into when I went to FITM, when I got into college level, it was easy for me to then start asking for advice or for like, okay, what do you think, and where should this is what I'm planning, this is what I want to do, and getting their advice or their encouragement because they had already gone through all of that as well.
Okay, cool. So okay, so we got a little taste of like growing up, your life growing up in a crowded space, which you're
space.
Now, okay, so let's maybe talk about some role models that you maybe had outside of the household. Anybody jump out in specific that you could say, you know what, this person really gave me good advice. For me, there's this really good college professor. My first philosophy professor, he was the one that really instilled in us that, like, please, like, if you're going to go to college, if you're going to stick this route of college, do it because you want to get an education, not because you think you're going to make a lot of money. Like, that's like that. He's like, you're in the wrong place if you're going to do that, right? He's like, it's really about your education, and always remember that. Even if you can't even afford to go to college anymore, or just community classes, just always try to better yourself through education. So I always remember him as being like one of the people that still to this day were like, I'm out of college, but I still read. I still try to try to learn as much as I can, just for personal growth. So like, anybody jump out for you?
Well, I was gonna say, like, my teachers, my instructors, even from elementary school through middle school, through my dance instructor. But right now that you're talking about you're a college professor, one of my an English teacher in college, he was very forward with his class and would, let everyone know, hey, if this is the path that you want to take, great. But as you're starting, if you realize that this is not the path that you want to take, stop this path and go down the route that you really want to be in. Because we were all it was a fashion school, right? It was for fashion design. And I didn't realize when he was telling us that, I was like, why is he discouraging people to, take a different path? They're here, they want to be here. But that was my thought initially. Like, why is he discouraging them to go elsewhere? Well, it wasn't until one of the students came up to him and said, I've always wanted to be an English teacher or a creative writer. And that's when the light bulb hit. I said, oh, some people are doing this maybe for the glitz and the glam of what they think this industry is. And not me. Like, I was like, my only skill is sewing. My only skill is I love clothes, right? This is like something that was instilled in me. So I was like, this is the only path I'm going to take. But I didn't realize that that's not the case with everybody. And it was that moment that I learned, like, oh, shoot, people are doing this to maybe please someone else or please what they think this business is all about. So I remember a lot of people ended up changing their major, dropping out of that school, going elsewhere. And so that for me was another big eye-opener. And I was just appreciative that I was in a position where I needed to be. Like, that was me, that was my path. So from there forward, I always started really paying attention to the professors, because I was like, they're saying these things because they know and have experienced things.
Yeah, and even I think nowadays, even more than ever, the world has changed so much since, like, from when you went to college. Schools were literally the gatekeepers of information. Like, yeah. You had to go to school if you wanted to, to get a better life, right? Now, I'm not sure if that's the case anymore. There's so many avenues and there's so many different paths that an individual can take that you could definitely, make it if you just dedicate yourself, to something different, I think school is important. I think, but more importantly is your education, which isn't necessarily the same thing as going to school. I think education is really the pinnacle.
Well, I think right now, because we have so many options with schooling or education, right? There's different types of education now,
Yeah.
right? Where people who have been in the industry, in any industry, but right now I'm gonna use fashion industry, for over 20 years, they have some skill, right? Just like myself, there's some skill, there's knowledge there. So that is someone you can learn from, right? There's an educational piece that I do with my college students as well. There's so many other courses out there that's like that short type of education that people can jump on. I'm still a little, I'm still just biased to going to school.
Yeah.
And to getting that education. The one thing that my family would ask is that, as a brother-in-law asked me one time specifically, he says, well, now that you're going to, you went back to school, because I went back to school 10 years later for my business degree, because I went to school for fashion and it was a 2-year school. And I was like, I'm not going back right now. Like, I need a break, right?
Sure.
Because straight out of high school, I only had a 2-week break. And then I started college.
Okay.
And I went back to back, no breaks. And so when I went back, he was like, you've been in the industry already for 10 plus years. Are you really learning anything different, right? So that was the question. And I said, you know what? What I'm learning is a lot of the terminology. There's a lot of business terminology that I don't use every day because of my position, and I've had to learn in my position to use the most basic words because I'm working with China, I'm working with Mexico at the time, I'm working with different people who English is not their first language. So when my technical role has to translate that, I have to use like my ABCs, layman terms completely, so I'm getting my message across to what I need my partner overseas or another country to then be able to translate that correctly. Mm-hmm. So so these big words was not something that I would use on a daily basis. But I knew that that was going to be beneficial to me having my own business, because my own business I knew I was going to be wearing multiple hats. Sure. I wasn't just going to be that one person who specialized in that kind of design and that kind of technicality for the design world. So that was a big eye opener for me. The having had already worked in a group setting, right? Because when you're in a work setting, you have colleagues that you work with. So that experience, and when I went back for my business degree, that was a big thing. We all worked in a group setting. I was already used to it. I had been working with different personalities since I first started in the early 2000s. So that I knew. So there was a lot of things that I already knew. But then there was a lot of other things that I didn't know, that I wasn't exposed to. And the classroom setting for me, that education for me, I was exposed to it because of that setting. So right now, yes, I take courses with different folks, different people. My learnings haven't stopped at all, right? And so it can be a different kind of professional. I've taken many MBA classes from professors that all have come together with a certain program, and one is from Berkeley, one is from Stanford, one is from Harvard, one is from Cal Poly. They're all USC, like they're all coming together to teach this mini MBA course for professionals, right? For small business owners. So I've never stopped learning, but it's always been in some kind of a classroom setting. Mm-hmm. So the education for me, it's just, I've enjoyed it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it works for you, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And well, as for me, I did well in college. I mean, I graduated with a honor roll and on the dean's list and all this and that. Though, I could definitely see how, children especially in high school, if they're not getting it, you'll just get passed along,
You
and
will.
you won't learn. But some of these kids that end up maybe in gangs or what, they're incredibly brilliant. They're so smart. It's just that their way of viewing the world is more I guess hands-on and problem solving and stuff like that. I mean, they're putting it to different use and not ethical use, right? But
But it's still
but it's still
it's problem
it's
solving.
it's really incredible to see. I mean, we've had clients that are ex-cons and they started their business. And they would tell me stories about what they would do in jail, how they would get different items to use and to cook. And I would have never thought of that in 100 years. But you guys
They figure it out.
they
And
figure
they're
it out.
scrappy. Yeah.
And that's what in philosophy, in my classes in philosophy, that's what the professors try to instill in you. They're we're not here, if you could write a paper and I disagree with it 100%, but you argue in such a way
Yeah.
okay, you presented your arguments, you're arguing correctly. It doesn't matter if I agree with you or not. You did it correctly. And and also about going back to the vernacular, I had a professor where he said that he would get mad if in your essays you would use big words, because philosophy students tend to use big words to kind of show off a little bit. And so he would get mad. He's like, most of you are going to go on to be lawyers. That's why you guys are here. You think in law, they're going to if you guys are in court and whatnot, you guys are going to be using big words to try to get the jury to go your way. You guys aren't. So, use everyday language. Try to get your point across with language, if you were talking to a 5-year-old, essentially, you know? And so, I mean, but I mean, like we're saying now, education really is the key, whether you go to class or whether you do it through through an internship or whatnot, it's getting that experience and that just learning, just being able to do that.
And the hands-on experience, the hands-on for me, I've always noticed that there's always an advantage to that, right? The in-person internships, right? Because I know a lot of things right now are hybrid. We even have hybrid internships, right? Especially for social media, which is fine. But I always see that it's much more beneficial, and I've noticed it's much more beneficial when there is some portion of it in person, because then you're around other people, right? You're communicating with your colleagues, you're seeing the product that you're talking about, you're touching, you're feeling, right? There's a whole different experience to that as well. So the in-person internships, I always tell, we hire a lot of youth staff, so I always tell my youth staff, however many internships you can take while you're in school, or any job that you can take while in high school especially, take it. I said, because ultimately that's going to allow you to also understand that, oh, you know what? I thought I wanted to be in retail, but after working there and seeing how much work it is, I don't think I want to. And seeing how much communication it is with customers and I'm not very social. Maybe I want to do, social media behind the end, marketing behind the end, right? With not being in the front.
Yeah, also being exposed to the real world, and in high school and college, you could be really insulated. And, being exposed, I mean, I had the added advantage that I went to school, and when I didn't, I would go to the business with my dad. So, I would put in practice what I learned from school. But I guess if I didn't have that, I would have come out way too fresh. Like como dicen, muy verde, very green.
Very green.
Yeah, because I wouldn't have known anything really, But definitely when I left college, when I was done, the growth was much more exponential.
Yes.
It was slow at first, and then it started going.
Oh,
and
I
so
believe
it's
it.
very important to,
No,
to do that.
I believe it, and that's definitely something that I've seen firsthand ever since I've started working with youth staff, and then even more so with college students. Like college students, that's a whole different mindset, right? Especially if you're not exposed. Like I was very fortunate that I had a large family, right? We have a large family. And as a kid growing up, I knew where Valencia was. I knew where Yorba Linda was. I knew where West Covina was. I knew where Downey, where like I knew where all these different cities were, right? And not realizing that my friends didn't.
Yeah.
And they're like, what, where? I'm like, oh yeah, my, aunt lives over there, my uncle lives over here. And so again, I was like, oh shoot, like I had an advantage that my friends didn't have, right? So I was exposed to other communities also. So in college, it's the same, the students that I'm coming across, the same thing, right? They're living in the community, and it's almost like that's the four walls that they know. And so being able to introduce them into the real life work experience and share with them my story of where I grew up, right? I didn't grow up any different than what they're growing up.
Sure.
Then it gives them a whole different type of inspiration, a whole different type of like, okay, I can do this. And then showing them the different areas that are in fashion, right? Because we do fashion, we do just entrepreneurship in general, we do design, we do business, right? Administration. So we cover marketing, social media, we cover everything. And so I explained to them, like your idea of, business, a lot is still very theory because you're in school. And if you're just starting off with work, then you're getting a step ahead of maybe your colleagues or your classmates who haven't worked, right? I said, and so then I just explained to him, like there's every industry, you have all these different components, right? So it opens up their eyes too and just expands their world. Like when I first went to school and when I walked, my mom and I went to tour FIDM, so the Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising in downtown LA. After high school, I really wasn't like keen on continuing my education. And I remember back then we had to take our SATs. And during that time, we had to write down at least 3 different schools that we wanted to attend. And so apparently I didn't write that down, and my counselor called me down and said, hey, you're missing, where you want to go. And I was like, I don't want to go anywhere. If anything, I'll go into the entertainment industry, right? And I was like, but I don't want to go. There's nothing that interests me. So she was like, you have to write something down. So at the time, I had taken home economic classes, right? I had been sewing already since I was 7. So I was like, okay, the only other thing that interests me is fashion. So I just opened up this big old book in the library and started scrolling, and I just pulled like 3 different fashion schools. So FIDM called me on that. And one day when they called, they were like, oh, we received the information that you were interested in possibly attending our school. And I was like, what are you talking about? And I was like, how did you get my information? And back then, this was the house phone, right? So landline. This is not a cell phone.
What is that?
Yeah, a landline. And I was like, what? How'd you get my information? She was like, well, and she had to remind me. She says, well, when you took your SATs, there's a question that you had to fill out what school that you were interested in, and you filled out FIDM. And I said, oh. So I told her, I said, no, I'm not interested. And she was like, are you sure? And I was like, yeah, no. So she called several times. And I said, okay, let me talk to my mom, and we'll schedule something to come out. So it's like she's pulling teeth. Like I was like, okay, maybe. And so I told my mom, and my mom was like, yeah, we should go. So we went, and let me tell you. So it was when I walked in that I fell in love with the campus, and I was like, immediately, I was like, I'm coming here. So it was something internal. After supposedly me not wanting to go to school, and so went forward, moved on with that whole step and whatnot. And even though when it came to my registration, I believe it was. So we went through, I filled in or completed a portfolio that they asked, did all that, and I was a junior in high school. So junior or 10th grade, I don't even remember. Anyhow, and So went well. The portfolio went well. So then we decided, okay, then I was more enticed to, to attend. And then I don't know what got into my head that I was like, I don't know if I want to ultimately go. So I missed the first registration date.
Oh. Okay.
And so missed that. And my mom was like, what happened? I said, I don't know, blah, blah, made something up. And then the second time around, we had the second opportunity. My parents were in Mexico. And so my mom calls and she's like, did you go? Remember, your date is so-and-so. And I don't know if it was the day before or that day, very near, right? I don't know if it was, she called to remind me that it was the following day or something. I said, no, yes, Mom. I went. I think I'm just gonna say that. I told her, yes, Mom, I went. But I almost didn't even
go to that
one. So it wasn't like I was like, keen, even though I knew that when I walked in, I was like, oh my gosh, this is great. So for me, I ought to say that was a different atmosphere I had never been in. And if I would have never walked in to just do the orientation, I would have not known the possibility and just the beauty of, fashion, which ultimately was where I was supposed to land. So that was a whole different, experience for me. But I'm glad that I went. I'm glad that I attended. So as much as what I've learned has opened up my eyes is what I try to then instill and teach my youth staff, the college students that come through my program, that there's so many possibilities out there. And yes, having fun is something that, you're still young, right?
Sure.
You can do, and if you're able to, but just know your priorities. Right, and a happy balance, because that could always just.
It's funny you say that. When I interviewed my dad, he's like, forget about fun, forget about going to parties. He's like, if you want to make it, you gotta work. And I was like, when he said that, I was like, wow, the immigrant mentality is so different from us that are born here. Obviously we grew up seeing them, that my dad, he would wake up, he says, at 2, 3 in the morning and go out and work 24-hour days sometimes, And so I told him, I was like, dude, it's just that, you and I, we live different lives, essentially, your dad, my padrino, Jesus, you guys are like pioneers. You guys paved the way so that we could go through,
Yes.
So your message is good. Yeah. You got to work hard, but also, I think kids are going to be like, I don't want to work all this time. It's just funny seeing that, you got to have a work-life balance,
It's totally different mentality for sure. And the college students now, it's so funny, and I tell them, just do a happy balance, because that was me. As much as I knew that I needed to be home, especially in school, because with fashion design and any creative world, it's a lot of hands-on. So it's not like you can get something done in 20 minutes and be gone. You're not just writing a paper, right? Oh my gosh. So there was so many times that I had to start asking my friend, girl, can you just call me and make sure that I'm on top of it? Because if my friends call me, I'm gonna go hang out with them. All to say that I got through my classes, but now that's why I'm not gonna try to preach don't have fun, right? Just make sure it's a happy medium. Don't just overdo it. And the same thing I did with my daughter. She went to Otis and she wanted to go for fine arts. So, hello, fine arts, you're there painting. And that artwork is not going to get done in 20, 30 minutes. And that is something where you do something and then you have to take a break, because your hands, your eyes, you have to take a break. And so I would tell her always, what do you mean you're going to go hang out and be all gone? So it was just the funniest thing that now, what I experienced, and then now what my daughter was going through, and then the college students that I'm working with, I just promote a happy balance, and you guys will be okay.
Yeah, definitely. And so you have another added layer. I don't know if difficulty is the correct way to say it, but you had your daughter, rather young, right?
Yes.
So how did you how old were you when you
I had her when I was 20.
when you were 20? So how did you navigate, like, because you were going to college still, or you were out already?
No, so I was very fortunate that I had finished
Oh, okay.
FIDM. And I finished FIDM, and in 2002, in 99, no, in 2001, and I had her in 2002.
Oh, okay.
So very, very close. And, but lucky for me that in the fashion industry, you really only need 2 years to get into the business,
Okay.
to start working, and people are okay with that type of a degree, right? It's not, I didn't need a 4-year degree or anything. So prior to having her, well, after I finished school, I was in no rush to get into the industry. So a friend of mine and I, as our own graduation gift to each other, we ended up going out to New York. So we did some traveling. So that was super fun, whole different experience. So it was a lot of fun. And then when I came back, I had like a retail job. I was coaching the girls' drill team at the local school. So I was just doing these little jobs because I just, again, was no rush to get into the industry. I didn't have any responsibility at the time. So it wasn't until I got pregnant, and then I knew, okay, now these little jobs are not going to cut it. So as I was getting closer to finishing my maternity leave, I started looking for work, and I was very fortunate at the time that there was a lot of work, and I landed a really good job. I'm still living with my parents, and but now I was going to work Monday through Friday. So my mom was my babysitter. So my mom helped me watch the baby while I went and did my 8-hour day out work Monday through Friday. So that was a huge help. I honestly don't even know how I would have managed if that were not the case. Mm-hmm. So did that, and I kind of just kept going down that route. I stayed living at my parents' house for a few years. I want to say in 2009 is when I bought my house.
Okay.
So 2009 was, the crash, the real estate crash, the mortgage crash, all of that. Well, I was still very young at the time, but I had a job. I had a really good job. At the time, I was working at Guess. And my position has always been a position that is always needed. So it was a very high level, a skill level, right, is always needed. So I felt very secure in my position, but I don't know if I really wasn't associating with everything that was happening with the possibility of me getting a house or not. I just called one day and talked to a lender, and was asking them if I qualified for a program, and they said that I did. So I said, okay, I'd like to move forward. So it was just me, very casual, right? So, but throughout this whole time, still living at my parents' house, them helping me, still going to work. That was my routine, right? And then on the weekends, hanging out with her, right, enjoying the weekend. So there wasn't a lot of pause, right, in between. There wasn't pause from high school to college. There wasn't a lot of pause from college to work, even though it was like small works. And then there wasn't a lot of pause then when I, finally did get into the industry. But ultimately, the help, my older, siblings all helped also. And then as she, started growing, getting older, the same things. And nephews and nieces and nephews around her age. So then she would go and hang out. And when I was, I believe around 2010 is when I really started getting serious with then building my business. So ultimately, I had all this help while I was working for someone else. Then building my business was a whole different type of structure. I had my house, so the garage was my workspace, but my weekends were gone. My evenings and weekends I spent on my business. And even before 2010, I almost forgot, there was a whole phase still in the before 2006, there was a phase where I was doing bridal. So my original passion is in bridal and evening wear. Like I saw my mom make my sister's quinceañera dresses, their wedding dresses, and she was doing everything by hand, and I was always there looking. I was so intrigued, and then so she was hand sewing, hand beading everything. And then the year that fabric glue came out was like heaven. It was the funniest thing. So now I can kind of just look back at all of that, because my mom was like, oh my gosh, now I can glue all these things on. And so bridal and evening wear was just a really big thing for me. And sewing by hand was another big thing for me. So doing beadwork was big. So prior to 2006, maybe 2003 to 2006, maybe 2004 to 2006, I'm trying to get my years right, I opened up a bridal shop.
Oh, wow.
So I started doing bridal and evening wear, and opened up a bridal shop, and I did that for several years, and I loved it. And then I knew, though, I was like, I had already worked a few years in the fashion industry, so gained some experience, and I was like, I felt confident enough to go start my own business. Then I was in my own business and things were going great, but then something told me, I was like, you need to go back to learn more from the industry. I think there was something that was like, there's something more out there for you. And that came to 2006 when then I landed a job at Guess. And Guess found my resume. A friend of mine recommended for me, I think the platform was like monster.com or something. Yeah. Okay. She recommended, and I said, but I don't think the fashion industry looks on monster.com. And she was in HR, and she goes, I think they do. Test it. And so I did. And Guess found me from this one-liner because I did an internship with denim.
Okay.
And so they were looking for someone who had experience in denim. And I was like, that's like one line. But for her, it meant the world, because no one really had experience in denim. So I said, okay, yeah, I'll come to the, interview. So I was really talking to her about that experience with denim, and I ultimately landed the job. But all of that, my mom helped in between, because at that time, my mom wasn't working full time anymore. So she was home. Then my, siblings would watch my daughter as, I needed also, or she would hang out with her dad on the weekends, or when I was working, right? They did their own thing, which was really nice, because then I was at home and focused on my stuff. And then getting the opportunity at Guess, that changed my life completely. And I learned a lot from Guess. Guess was like the battleground where I learned what to do, what not to do, the things I should avoid. And I came in at a really big part where they were doing major organizing, right? So that has helped a lot with my business. But definitely with my daughter, as then I got into Whimsical Charm, I remember telling her, I said, look, I believe she was in middle school by this point. I said, I'm going to be doing a lot of traveling. I said, so I'm not going to be around a lot, so you'll end up having to stay at Ama's, or, you'll stay with one of your friends, and her parents will drive you to school. So I always had people who helped, right? Because again, if not, there was no way I could have managed this. There was just no way. And so it was a struggle for her too, right? Because I was gone, I wasn't around as often. That's when I was doing trade shows, because when I first started the business, it was just straight trade shows. So I was traveling the East Coast, because that's where I found my success, was on the East Coast. So 3 to 4 times a year, I was traveling. So it was very often, and it felt like I was coming home and then I was already, traveling back. Mm-hmm. So it was very hard for her also. So I had a huge impact, but I just reminded her that, well, it's at this time it was just her and I living in the household. Her dad and I had already separated. So that, made things even much more challenging. We were in a completely different school district. We had moved into a school district where I wanted her to be able to experience creative and the arts, because that was her passion, right? So just trying to work, trying to build a business, but making sure she's in a school district that is going to cater to what she loves doing, right? Drama, dance, arts, that whole music, the whole bit. So we made, sacrifices to live in that school district. So it was very, there was a lot of challenging times, but, we overcame it. So did she, and she's super, creative. She has her own business and things now, but it wasn't an easy ride. It was definitely...
No, definitely. And, these are the type of struggles that you don't really hear from the male perspective, right? And being a mother, especially a single mother, if you weren't with your, her dad, then, it just makes things more challenging. Plus, you had the business, and so it was, I could imagine, it was a little bit more stressful.
It was stressful. It was so stressful that, so her dad and I separated as I was getting into more in depth into the business. And I remember telling one of my advisors, I had just picked up an advisor, and that was my first time, getting into investing in myself as the business and a personal advisor. And I told her, I said, I don't think I can do this right now. I said, this is what's happening. And she was like, oh, no. So we met up and we went for a walk. And so she shared her experience with me, because she also went through that and I didn't know. So it was a time for her to be able to share what her experience was with her son growing up in almost like the same kind of situation. And she was like, if anything, this is a time where you would want to pursue your, furthering your business even more so than not. And at the time I was still working full time. And I'm really glad I had that conversation with her, because if she was not in my life at that time, I probably would have never done this. I would have done, another business or gone a different route. But so I'm very, grateful to her, but because she had experienced it also, right? And so that's why I took her words even more to the heart, because if it was someone who hadn't gone through that experience and who was just like, no, you shouldn't, because of A, B, C, I think it would have been a different route. But because she had that prior experience, it was relatable.
And it was, this goes back to what we were talking earlier, that you just never know who needs to hear the advice or just needs a helping hand, because now you were able to grow your business, right? But if someone never told you, you probably just would have, and help doesn't have to come in the form of a monetary, whatever. It comes in many different forms, so definitely, great advice, from your, I guess you could say, kind of a mentor, really.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So
at that time, that's exactly what she turned into.
Yeah, a mentor. Okay, so we've gone through a lot, now. Focusing on the business, focusing on Whimsical Charm, what do you think, for those listening, what do you think is the most important thing that has led to your success? What do you think, if you could give a piece of advice, what do you think is that thing that, focus on this?
Well, staying true to what you wanted to build and the reason for building that. Right. So when I first started, I knew immediately that I also wanted to keep production locally. That this was not a product that I wanted to take overseas. Me, coming from the fashion industry, where everything is manufactured overseas, right? That was the experience that I came across. That's what I knew. There was very minimal interaction with production be made here locally. So for me, that was always a big thing. And when I started attending trade shows, people, buyers or anyone else, people I started coming across, they were like, well, why don't you take it overseas? And I'm like, no, I have control. It's called quality control, and I know what is going into the product. And overseas, I don't know. I don't know who's touching the product. For me, the people who touch the product are very important, because I believe we all have our own energy. And the energy that we are emitting out when we are working on the product gets felt by this next person.
Did it die maybe?
It sounds a little like, I'm not sure. What is it?
Here. Let me see.
It's like staticky. I'm not sure which.
Oh, that's the wind. Here, let's put the wind guards on. Yeah, look at that.
I didn't know there was such a thing as wind guards.
Yeah, and I didn't
So-
think to put them on. I was like, oh, we're indoors, doesn't really. Here, you could just clip it onto the top of your.
Oh, this is just a clip.
Yeah.
On top of the mic section?
Yes.
Okay. Oops, I pressed something.
Staticky little? No?
No?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Technical difficulties. Sorry.
No, that's okay. So when people started expressing their own opinions on how, oh, why don't you go overseas? And I said, no, right? Quality was a first thing that came to mind, was having things made locally. You have more control on quality, and you also know who's touching your product. So for me, I'm a big believer in where we all have energy.
Sure.
And so the energy that we emit into what we are making, creating, that then gets traveled on with the product. So everyone who has touched my product are people who I know, or people who have been recommended to me. Everyone I work with are people who we once worked together in the fashion industry, and then we eventually all branched out to do our own business. So my cutter I worked with in the past in the fashion industry. My seamstress is a production seamstress, and she opened up her own little hole-in-the-wall shop. And so all of these people, like, I know everybody, right? The person who helps me embroider, like, I know them. And all of these people have really good and kind hearts and have all helped me get to where I am today. So for me, that was a big thing of mine, right? Staying focused on what I wanted to do with my collection, with my line, because there was times when that shiny object was like, oh, there's this opportunity over here, and I went that route, and it just took me for a loop. And I said, never again. I'm just going to stay on track. My items are very boutique-y. I'm going to continue to that. I will grow as I feel I need to, not when someone is telling me that, okay, go do this and that'll help you grow, right? Everyone to their own pace. And that has helped me. That has really helped me stay on track, even down to where, so I plan out my calendar a year in advance.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So the shows that I attend, a year in advance. If I don't have that show on the calendar for that year, sorry, well, I'll think about it for next year, but for this year, I'm not going to do it. But I learned the hard way. And for me, that was a good lesson to learn early on, because, that shiny object is always there. And, you're going to be like the squirrel. Oh, what's that? Oh, what's this? Or what's over here? And maintaining your original concept as to why you started, the reason why, and continue down that path on your own time, on your own schedule, and forget about what else is out there, right? So people may be 10, 20 years in advance of what you're doing and you're trying to compare yourself with them, no way, right? Especially if you're in your first year, and then even as you get 1, 2, 3, right, and then 4, 5, and you just stay on track because what you're doing is fine. That was another lesson I learned when I was working for a company. I was consulting, I was freelancing, and I remember every week we would get together for the monthly, or maybe it was just the weekly numbers. Mm-hmm. And I remember them saying, "My gosh, we're celebrating our 10-year this year, celebrating 10 years in business," and they were finally meeting their margins that they wanted to.
Oh wow!
And they were already now at the 10-year mark. They were then being much more exposed than what they had been in the past. So larger companies, all sizes of companies, start from somewhere, and they get to that point by just staying on track mm-hmm. according to where they want to be and how they see the growth. Like, forget about what everybody else is doing.
Cool, excellent. And okay, well, that's a very interesting take, because you always hear like comparison is a thief of joy, right? But you never really hear it like, just stick to what you got to do. Some people say, you know what, if it's not working in a couple of years, just drop it and start something new. That's I feel like that's becoming more and more popular. Like, just like giving up on stuff, not going through with it if you don't think like it's gonna go. And that goes back to the mindset that it's more for them. It's more about the payout,
the quick,
than that it is about the experience and
or even the heart.
Yeah, but I mean, the journey. I think the journey is much better than like being at the pinnacle. I remember when my dad, like he I guess you could say he accomplished everything that he kind of in his head wanted to, and he was like, wait, this is it? Like, he's like, I thought it was gonna be like some like big thing, and he even I wouldn't say he got depressed. I would just say it was just like a little like letdown for him because he was just like building it up that he didn't enjoy the buildup,
Yeah,
and
the journey.
And a lot of people don't really enjoy the journey, as much as they should, because that's when you learn. That's then when you meet the people that are gonna be around you, build the relationships, networking, stuff like that, and that is more important than getting to the destination.
So I'm kind of smiling and laughing because going back to what you said, as far as some people will drop it if it's been a couple years and they see nothing, right, or at least to their standards. So again, when I was starting my business, I was still working. I wasn't working full time, but I was working part time, right? So it was 3 days a week. That's all I needed to work part time, and the rest I was putting it into my business. So a friend of mine at the time, this friend has so many great ideas, and she would start some of them, and then she never continued it and had all these other ideas and never moved forward with it. And I was like, girl, you have great ideas. What are you doing? And then I would share with her like different experiences, and I would be like, I thought the show was going to be better and didn't, la la la. And she says, if something doesn't work out for me in the year to 2, I think 2 was too much for her. She goes, I'm done. I said, no, you can't do that because that's not how business, you're not giving yourself a chance to even see. I said, if it's working and you see potential and people see the potential in you and people are buying, then, you keep moving. But that whole mentality has been around for a long time, where you want this quick turnover of profit, of high margins really quick, when that's not necessarily the case at the beginning. There was a lot of bootstrapping, right, that went on with me, and that happens a lot, where you're just trying to figure these things out, and then getting paid from over here, and then putting it into this next project over here, and then finally getting to the point where I can get a loan, and then got the loan, and then put it into this next big project that I had, and then once you have a couple years, even a first year projection of what you did in the past, then you have valid projections versus just the theoried projections, right? So then now you can really see what is working, what is not, and then you kind of adjust accordingly. I was listening to a podcast not too long ago, and the guest was asked, well, how do you know when you make it, right? And he says, or how do you know when you have a good product? And the guest says, no, the product you start with is not going to be good. So don't think your product's going to be good. He says, the customer is going to tell you if it's good. And he is so right, because he says you need to listen to what then they're saying. Oh, we need this, we need that. And then you have to adjust, but you're not dropping things. You're just now, okay, creating a different size. That's what I had to do. I only had one size. So then I started creating different, sizes. Then we had multiple colors. Then we had multiple designs. So he was like, your customer is going to tell you. So forget about, your idea. You go into it, but then you're going to have to change and adjust accordingly.
Definitely.
And that's what we've done, but I haven't geared away from what I'm doing.
Sure,
right?
you're still true to who you are,
I'm still true to who I am.
The product has changed over time, sure, and that's not what we're talking about. We're talking more about like going in, like you could change the product, I think that's okay, even exploring different kinds of avenues, like selling, like you started with blankets, right? And then you develop into so many other items,
Yes.
So yeah.
So it evolves. It evolves.
And where do you see, where do you see then Whimsical Charm? You've been in the business now, what, 15 years?
It'll be 15 years in a few months.
Okay, 15 years. So where do you see Whimsical Charm going in the next 15 years?
So definitely see it expanding into this tween market.
Okay.
So the tween market, the age range 7 to 16, definitely specific designs. It'll be more of a loungewear to start off with. I've never really been the trendy person. I've never been the one to follow trends. I've always been more of like timeless pieces. Mm-hmm. And so that for me is what has also guided my designs. Timeless pieces, timeless colors. So that is where I'm looking to grow Whimsical Charm. That'll be the next phase, and that'll be a whole different journey. And even expressing it, currently expressing it with different people, it's like people are getting upset. They're like, but you're doing so well what you're doing. I said, yeah, I know, but we're expanding, we're growing. Some things won't carry on, right? So we're known for our blankets, we're known for our robes, so that we're going to continue as long as we can for the infant, the baby, right, the toddlers. But we're gonna eliminate some stuff to be able to then grow with the next. So it's just funny how people, start imposing their own opinions onto what they think. But again, that's from the outside in, right?
Sure.
But I'm excited for that. My nieces and nephews who started with me from day one are now in that size range. So it's excited to be able to now do this new collection where they're going to be my models again. And so that's always a lot of fun. And it's just, it's the next phase. The one thing I also haven't left is, we were talking about bridal. That's like my ultimate passion and first time. So with my college students, we are doing a mini bridal collection.
Oh, wow.
So I've never left bridal. People who know what I do and the dresses and gowns and alterations that I've done, to this day, they'll reach out to me. Hey, I need some help. I'm like, oh yes, I'm down. Like I will not say no to a bridal dress alteration or to a beaded evening gown. It really brings joy to my life. So we decided to do a collection. So this collection with the college students will be in, so that I'm also integrating this hands-on work experience for them with mentorships, but then ultimately we're going to see how we can then sell the product so it can go back into my nonprofit, so then we can continue doing that with the next students. So that is still somewhat of an extension of Whimsical Charm, because the nonprofit is still our sister company, and so that's how we integrate the students that walk through Whimsical Charm still with Divine Hug, the program that we offer through the nonprofit. So it'll all be in collaboration with each other, but as far as the brand, and it'll be Whimsical Charm Kids. It'll be the label for the tween size, and that is definitely going to be. I mean, I'm reaching a whole new market segment with that, but it's nice that because of the people who started with me from day one with the baby, now the kids that they purchased for are in that range, so I don't feel like I'm starting from scratch.
You still have your client base.
Yes, I still have my client base that now I'm able to promote this new size range for them. So that's also exciting because it's really, building a client base is really tough. And it takes a lot of work. And
I assume also in the baby industry or like...
Yes, and so it would be very hard to let go of all of those, clients, potential clients. So it's really nice that I'll be able to jump into that with confidence, but also hitting a different market, right? So we'll definitely gain a lot more clients in other industries.
Gotcha. Okay. And well, to wrap up, now I asked this question to my first guest, my dad, and I asked this to you. Just I guess maybe a one-liner of like, what is your definition of success? What do you, if you could define it in one word or in one line, what do you think success is?
I don't know if I can define that in how. Let me see how short I can define that.
Or however you want to say that.
I believe that success is something that achieving something that you wanted to achieve. Whether from, kid, growing up, high school, just knowing that you were able to take those steps that you wanted to take and not what someone else imposed upon you. Not what your parents say that you need to be doing, but being able to just go down that road and taking that path that may feel super risky, super isolated, but that you took that first step. Because once you take that first step, the next one just is easier and easier.
Got it. Cool. And so, for all our people listening, you want to maybe put like where they could find your products or, your Instagram, Facebook, all that good stuff.
Yes, thank you. So on Instagram, most of our social media is at Whimsical Charm. If you Google us, we do populate because we've been around for over 14 years now. Facebook is at Whimsical Charm. No, Facebook, yes, Whimsical Charm by Rosie. Everywhere else is just Whimsical Charm. And we do have our store in San Pedro. So you can also Google our store here. We will be having, during the holiday seasons, we have multiple pop-ups. We'll be popping up in Long Beach at the Pike outlets during the holiday season. Okay. We will be selling our stuff in Burbank at the Collective in Burbank, and we are also recurring vendors at Knott's Berry Farm, so you can find us there twice a year, once during the holiday and then once during Boysenberry. So those are the pop-ups that we do during the holiday, and then year-round we tend to be, again, San Pedro's year-round. But as far as festivals, you can also find us at the Hermosa Beach Festival, the Redondo Beach Festival, and the Manhattan Beach Festival. So our website is whimsicalcharm.com, and we put all of our locations on there. Social media, of course, Instagram is where we put everything that's up to date. So people can also check us out, follow us there. They can subscribe to our newsletter so they can receive all this information as well, and they know our latest and greatest.
Well, that's great to hear. And, thank you again for taking this time, to... And hopefully the people that listen to this, hopefully there's someone out there that listens to your story and can be inspired that, I interned with you for a little bit and I can tell you, the growth is noticeable.
Yeah,
So,
thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I appreciate it so much.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right, guys. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time. All right.